Most weight loss plans are one size fits all, not taking into account each person's individual needs. Noom is here to change that. Noom Weight uses psychology. That's why they say losing weight starts with your brain. But it also takes into account your unique biological factors, which also affect weight loss success. The program helps you understand the science behind your eating choices and why you have cravings. Everyone's journey is different, so your daily lessons are personalized to you and your goals. One of the great things about Noom is that it's nourishing instead of restrictive. They focus on progress instead of perfection. You don't have to give up carbs, or anything for that matter. Have cravings? Food FOMO? Noom can help you lose weight while still enjoying your favorite foods. To date, Noom has helped more than 5.2 million people lose weight. Stay focused on what's important to you with Noom's psychology and biology-based approach. Sign up for your trial today at Noom.com. That's Noom.com.
Have you ever thought about opening your own mobile cart or kiosk business? Maybe the facility you manage could establish new revenue by adding coffee, food, or retail services. Cart King International can be the answer to your needs. Cart King is a North American designer and manufacturer of the finest mobile coffee, food, and retail carts and kiosks. Cart King has been working with clients and corporations across North America for 20 years, providing innovative designs, custom manufacturing, and timely delivery. Carts and kiosks are fun, and so are the dozens of designs on our website. Please visit us today at www.cart-king.com or just call us at 1-877-986-7771 and get your sales rolling.
If you find yourself in need of legal representation, it can be a very stressful time in your life. In my career, I have dealt with thousands of lawyers, I've dealt with thousands of law firms, and I can confidently recommend to you Keith M. Davidson at kmdlaw.com. Available 24 hours, 7 days a week. Just log into kmdlaw.com. That's kmdlaw.com. Or you can call toll-free 833-4KMD-LAW. That's 833-4KMD-LAW. Personal injury, wrongful death, STDs, sexual assault, car accidents, they handle it all efficiently and professionally. It doesn't matter how imposing the opposition may be, because the team at kmdlaw.com are battle-tested and fierce. They will not stop until justice prevails. Go to kmdlaw.com or call toll-free 833-4KMD-LAW. If you're in for the fight of your life, stop screwing around and contact KMD Law. PureSoapFlakes.com, 218-568-2525. Have you ever heard of Castile Soap? Pure Soap Flake Company handcrafts fine soap bars, laundry powder, and concentrated soap flakes using organic vegetable oils from their northern Minnesota facility. Bathe your body and wash your clothes with pure soap products that are free of fragrance, GMOs, palm oil, sodium lauryl sulfate, and synthetic additives. Keep it clean, folks. Pure Soap Flake Company products are kind to living creatures and sensitive skin, safe for drains and waterways, and work great in high-efficiency washers and top and front-loading machines. They have a little promotion going on. Contact them to order some soap. Mention the Opperman Report. You're going to get a free gift. They're going to sing a little extra soap, travel size, soap bars and laundry soap, cleaning soap flakes. I've been using that stuff all day long today. Great stuff. Order today at puresoapflakes.com or give them a call, 218-568-2525, 218-568-2525. Pure Soap Flake Company is a proud member of the Handcrafted Soap and Cosmetic Guild. Aquadam.net. Give them a call at 707-764-2119. A flooded home is never easy to deal with. You're left with the mess to clean up, having to deal with the insurance company, not to mention the memories that are lost that you can never replace. To those who live in flood-prone and hurricane-prone areas, which is just around the corner, prepare now. Hurricane season is right around the corner. Visit Aquadam.net to see how they can help you prepare to avoid flood damage this season and every season thereafter. An Aquadam could be another tool in your arsenal to protect your home and property from the floodwaters. A cofferdam, using water to control water, that can protect your home, your business, your church, your neighborhood, like a dam, but without the beavers. Give Aquadam a call at 707-764-2119, 707-764-2119, or look them up online at aquadam.net. They're also on Facebook at Aquadam Inc., or call or email them today. They can help you out. Give them a call. Tell them Opperman Report sent you. Opperman Report, that's 10% off the price to anyone who mentions the Opperman Report.
It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Go. Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. You can reach me at Opperman Investigations and Digital Forensic Consulting. You can also check out our website, OppermanReport.com, and we have a brand new live video podcast every Thursday night at GetVocal.com, GETVOKL.com. It's a live true crime podcast. This week, as a matter of fact, tonight we'll have on Mark Ebner talking about his latest book. And GetVocal.com. I need people to go there and sign up. Our guest today is Alan Woods, and he's with Marxist.com. That's his website. He's written many, many books. One is called The Great Betrayal, about Franco, Reason and Revolt. And Marxist.com is also known as In Defense of Marxism. You can find it that way, too, as well. And they just set up a thing called the Marxist Internet University that you can take a course at Marxist.com to learn all about Marxism. So, Mr. Alan Woods, are you there?
I am indeed, yes. Good afternoon. I suppose it's good morning out there, is it?
No, it's about 12 noon. It's 12 noon here.
Ah, there we are. There we are.
Yeah. So tell us about yourself. Who is Alan Woods?
Well, first of all, I am an active Marxist. I've been all my life. I was born in South Wales. No, I'm not English. I'm Welsh, for your information. And into a working-class family with strong left-wing traditions. And I've been a Marxist and a socialist and a fighter for socialism all my life. I've studied Marxism quite a lot. I've traveled widely, participated in the class struggle. You just mentioned the book I wrote about Spain, where I participated personally in the struggle against the Franco dictatorship in the 1970s. I studied Russian in the Soviet Union in the 1960s, and also in Bulgaria. I spent many visits to Pakistan, and of course, above all, to Venezuela, which I think you're particularly interested in. I was quite close to Hugo Chavez, the late Hugo Chavez, who was a friend and comrade of mine during his life, and that is basically my record to date. I hope that I will go on to do a few more things before I survive this lockdown that we're all suffering under.
Would you be offended if I asked you how old you are?
Not at all. I will be 76 on October the 23rd. You can send me a present if you like.
There you go. I think I will. I think I will. I would enjoy doing that. Now, you mentioned how was it that you first learned about Marxism and became interested?
Well, as I said, I was brought up in a poor working-class family in South Wales. South Wales is an area of coal mining and steel, which you have many areas like that in the States, I suppose, in Virginia and elsewhere. And a place also of very hard class struggle. Indeed, my grandfather was an active member of the Communist Party, and so was my mother. And, of course, I was brought up in that environment. People would talk. I remember distinctly when I was a kid, people would talk about the strike. When I was wondering what the strike was, as if it was yesterday, they were talking about the general strike of 1926, and which the working class suffered terribly from that defeat. And so, in a sense, you could say it was built into my genetic makeup. You could argue that. But from an early age, from 16 years of age, I joined the Labour Party Young Socialists at that time. I began a serious study of Marxism, of Marxist ideas, Marxist philosophy, and so on, which has sustained me ever since. So that, as I say, I go way back, 60 years, I think, 59 actually, to be precise.
Here in the United States, okay, pretty much
Yeah.
the average person who will listen to Alan Woods and say, Marxist? This man is a this man. The word Marxist is an insult in this country. He's a Marxist. He's a communist.
Well,
how would you explain yourself to that person?
Well, do you know, I think honestly, Ed, I could explain myself rather well. I could get people, I think, to listen, even very simple. But nowadays, I think many people, not just in the US, I think there's a general phenomenon, particularly with this crisis, which, by the way, is the deepest crisis, not in 60 years, as they try to say, or 70 years, whatever. It's the deepest crisis in the history of 200 years of capitalism. And the consequences of that. And many people, of course, have started, perhaps for the first time in their lives, they've started to think seriously about things, think seriously about the situation of society, the rich, the poor, the privileges, and so on. And I think many people now are more interested and more open, I would say, to discussing the idea of socialism than at any other time. I think that's particularly true of the States, actually. I mean, look at the success, the phenomenal success of Bernie Sanders, for example, though he eventually backed up. That was predictable because of the machinations of the Democratic Party and so on. But in any case, there is a growing interest. I've seen certain different opinion polls which state that a lot, particularly the young people in the States, I think I've seen figures of over 60%, well over 60%, that said that they would be prepared to vote for a socialist president. And I was quite amused with some American journalist, I forgot the name of the chap, about a year ago. He said, well, don't worry, no cause for worry, because not everyone thinks like that. And only 30% of the people in the States above 65 years of age think like that. Now, that's astonishing. After decades and decades of anti-socialist, anti-communist propaganda, that the 30% of people above 60 years of age in the state should contemplate voting for a socialist president. I mean, that at least shows me something. I think that something is changing in the States. Many people are beginning to think critically, you know?
I agree. I'm 57 years old, and I've never been so encouraged my entire life. And especially my daughter is 19 years old. She just started a college in Washington, D.C., and her and her friends, they're all serious leftists. But what would you say to that person? You know the person I'm talking about. They listen to maybe right-wing talk radio, and they hear socialist or Marxist, and they say, no, I believe in freedom. What do you say to that person?
Yes. Well, freedom for what? I mean, freedom for a handful of parasites, 1% of the less than 1% of the population in Wall Street to become obscenely rich at the expense of the whole of the rest of the working population. I don't think that's much of a freedom. And freedom for the rest. For the latest figure that was mentioned to me, I don't know whether it's accurate. I believe it is accurate. There are 30 million American workers that are unemployed or about to be made unemployed. And now this in a country which is the richest country in the world, surely any sane person ought to be thinking carefully as to how this could exist. And I believe that many people, even people that you describe, right? I think even many people, perhaps some of your listeners will strongly disagree with my opinion, but I'm of the opinion that many people, working class people that voted for Trump, it was a kind of protest vote, against the existing two-party system of Democrats and Republicans, which are fundamentally the same. They fundamentally defend the same values, the same capitalist system, and so on and so forth. So even that, in a funny sense, in a twisted sort of way, was the reflection of an undercurrent of strong discontent with the status quo, which I believe affects many more people than what you would think. By the way, I noticed even at that, and this is the last election, not this present, but the last election, where Bernie Sanders stood for the first time, many Trump voters said that if they didn't vote for Trump, they'd vote for Bernie Sanders. I think that is highly significant.
Yeah, before that, we had Ron Paul, too, who seemed to attract that same type of like-minded person. Yeah. But let me ask you a question, Mr. Woods. You keep mentioning, I've heard you say it many, many times, the workers. Isn't socialism people who don't want to work and want free stuff?
Well, the people that don't want to work and want free stuff at the expense of the whole of society is the 1% I just mentioned. The people, the fat cats in Wall Street, not the working class, who, whether they like it or not, are forced to work all their lives. And by God, they work in the States in particular, do they not? long hours of it. I saw there was one humorous, I suppose it's an anecdote about your present wonderful President, Donald Trump. And he was bragging in a dinner party with some of his rich, wealthy backers. Makes me laugh when he says he's against the establishment. When he's from that class himself, he's a billionaire. He's sitting at the table and he's boasting, I've created 1 million jobs. And the waiter, must have been a poor Latino, was listening to the conversation. He said, I know, Mr. President, I got 3 of them. You know, people working, in order to survive, obliged to work 2 or 3 jobs, you know, low paid and so on. This is hardly life, is it? I wonder when people live. You got 3 jobs. So you work and you sleep, and now you don't even get to do that because you'd be unemployed.
Yeah, if you can barely, sustain your food, your shelter, and that's slavery. If your income is slavery. So when people talk about freedom, well, this for the working class, this is slavery. It's what they used to call in the States wage slavery, wage slaves. Jack London and so on used to use that kind of language. It's quite correct. It's quite applicable. And the robber barons, don't you have the robber barons back with a vengeance? Mm. Now, I heard you mention Venezuela several times. So the average person here in the United States as well, the average person over 50, would say, well, Bernie Sanders would turn this country into Venezuela. Now you firsthand experience with Venezuela. Why don't you tell us how you became, in fact, you wrote a book, The Venezuelan Revolution, A Marxist Perspective. You can get it on Amazon.com. Why don't you tell us your experience with Venezuela, the Venezuelan Revolution, and Hugo Chavez?
Well, first of all, it was a revolution, you know. It was a genuine revolution. And by that, I mean a movement of millions of ordinary people. And Hugo Chavez, who I knew quite well, actually, I found him, he was a remarkable man. I know that he had a very bad press in the States. He was demonized by the CNN and the right-wing press in the States and so on and so on. He still is demonized. By the way, that should say to anyone with half an ounce of sense, would ask themselves the question, you know, if the right-wing billionaire press attacks a man, what's the reason for it? And the reason certainly was that Hugo Chavez did whatever he could. He did his best to defend the interests of a mass of poor people in a country, by the way, that ought to be a prosperous, wealthy country sitting on a sea of oil, you know, but was brutally exploited, particularly by the United States, by the oil companies and so on, for decades, for generations and so on. And this man was trying to make a change, trying to carry through a revolution. Now, the fact that revolution didn't turn out as many of us would have hoped, that's a separate question, which I'm quite willing to discuss the reason for that. But certainly he tried and introduced all kinds of reforms in health and education, remarkable reforms in health, education and other things, which represented a gigantic step forward. Now, I'm quite critical. I also know Nicolas Maduro, the president. I know him also quite well. But you see, I don't think that he doesn't step up to Chavez's knees, by the way. But in any case, and the present setup is as I say, it's chaotic, it's a mess, which in my opinion is because they didn't go far enough, not because they went too far. They tried to combine capitalism and socialism. It doesn't work, by the way. That simply cannot work. That leads to chaos. But to come to the point, despite everything, and I'm quite critical of the present state of affairs, despite everything, you see, even now people get a false impression. For a start, by the way, the first thing I had that in the States, people said, look at their conscience and ask, what is the role of America in all this? From the word go, the American establishment, American imperialism, if you like to use that expression, they set out to destroy the Bolivian revolution. They set out to destroy it and undermine it by all the means at their disposal, and they have considerable means, of course. Decades and decades of sanctions. By the way, they just stepped up in the middle of this coronavirus crisis. They stepped up the sanctions. They forced the few remaining American companies that are active in Venezuela to close down. This shows the hypocrisy when they talk about the poor people in Venezuela, the suffering. There is suffering, and there are poor people. How does that help the people of Venezuela? It does not. But if I might be allowed to just say a couple of words, you see, what they don't say, let's take this coronavirus. Now, perhaps even you don't know this, and I don't know. But certainly the average person in America wouldn't know. the treatment or the way in which the Venezuelan government has tackled this crisis has been a model. Even the opposition accept that. You know, even the opposition have said, well, say what you like about Maduro, but he's handled the crisis very well. For example, they surveyed immediately 11 million people were surveyed to see whether they had any symptoms of coronavirus. If they showed the slightest symptoms, they were immediately visited by a doctor, by a specialist, and sent into quarantine and given treatment and so on. With the result, I don't know if you know this, I didn't know it until recently, Venezuela is the country in the whole of South America with the lowest number of victims of this virus, and deaths. I think there are about 10 deaths, astonishingly.
Really?
But yes, really. Even the opposition has confessed that the thing has been well handled. Now, you contrast this with your own country, with Britain, which has got an appalling record in relation to this crisis, you know.
You know, that's interesting. 10 deaths would be less than the number of U.S. indictments against the leadership of Venezuela during this crisis.
That's right. Yes, that's another point. The U.S. has been continually provoking Venezuela. Now, what they've done now is they've recently, I think they've introduced a reward of $10 million, I think, for anyone giving information leading to the arrest of Nicolas Maduro. For goodness sake, that's an act of war. And they've also talked, prior to the crisis now set things back, but they were talking about sending the U.S. Navy to the Caribbean, allegedly because of drugs offenses. Now, look, even the American, the official drugs agency in the States knows perfectly well, and has stated many times, the blood route to the States is not through the Caribbean, it's through Colombia and Central America. So that was just another provocation. And the chap who's orchestrating all this is this horrible creature, Elliot Abrams, I think his name is, you know. He's the, if you didn't know, he's the special envoy for Venezuela. This man has got a very sinister past indeed, mixed up with all kinds of scandals of the Reagan era in Central America, you know, financing the Contras. He was involved in the Contra scandal, arming and training the El Salvador army. They were involved in a massacre in El Masote, I think, which got 200 persons were killed. The whole thing was hushed up. Abrams was actively involved in all of that. And here is the man who's orchestrating this campaign against Venezuela. It really is a monstrous indictment, really.
And don't forget, too, you mentioned El Salvador, and we can't forget the murder of those nuns. You know, and how people can try and justify that in their heads by demonizing people seeking social justice, economic justice.
Well, of course, I do not identify the people of the United States with their government, the actions of the government. Neither did Chavez, by the way. Now, there's an interesting point. I've heard Chavez speak many times. Never at any time did he ever attack the American people as such. He would attack the American government, of course. Don't forget, there's a man that went to Harlem and met with the ordinary black people and so on, and tried to help them and so on. But no, he always had a class point of view, not a nationalist point of view. That's the case, you know.
I have a quick question for you, because you mentioned the success of the attacking the virus there in Venezuela. How about Cuba? What's going on in Cuba? Because they have an excellent medical program down there.
Yeah, well, I haven't had the latest figures from Cuba. I could easily find out, but I do not believe that there's any problem in Cuba. First of all, it's an island with very limited links with the rest of the world, so you wouldn't expect that. Furthermore, easily controlled. And as you correctly say, they have an excellent health service. Now, there again, I mean, I have got many criticisms of the present Cuban regime. It's not socialism in any sense that I would understand. But nevertheless, what it does show is the advantages, the clear advantages of a system based on a nationalized health service, for example, which is built for the attention of health for the people, which surely ought to be the purpose of a health service anyway, and not the profits of a few companies, as is regrettably the case in the USA. I mean, I can't get my head around that yet. How a country like the USA could tolerate this state of affairs, it's beyond me, beyond my comprehension.
Yeah, how we could have we spend more money on medical health care than any country on the planet, probably half the countries combined, and our healthcare system is a disaster. It's a nightmare to try and weave your way through this. Right. And all this money is getting siphoned away by these insurance companies.
That's the point.
Why is there an insurance company involved in medical care? What do we need them for? You know?
You tell me. It's a crime against the American people, actually.
Yeah.
Absolute crime.
No, but back to Venezuela.
It's clearly exposed now by the present coronavirus crisis.
Yeah, you'd think more people would wake up. Now, but back to Venezuela for a moment, because many people will say, well, Venezuela failed. And you pointed out initially, okay, sure, there was U.S. intervention and U.S. agitation, the power grid, taking down the power grid. But what about the food shortages? What was the cause of the food shortages?
Well, look, the position is, as I said earlier, I'm not a particular admirer of the present state of affairs in Venezuela, which I've warned against. By the way, I discussed this with Chavez on many occasions. And I've gone public in Venezuela on many occasions. You see, if you're going to go for a socialist system, you must nationalize, you must take over what is known as the commanding heights of the economy. You can't mix and match part state ownership and part private ownership, which is what they've got in Venezuela. That includes agriculture, by the way. I mean, Venezuela ought to be able to produce plenty of food because the land reform was only partially carried out. And above all, of course, there is the most of the big food companies are in private hands, in the hands of the oligarchy still. They've not been taken over. And I believe that a large part of the food shortage is in fact produced by hoarding, deliberate hoarding, partly to get unfair profits, as also happens now with the coronavirus scandal in many countries. But they've been doing this for years in Venezuela, and also deliberately to sabotage the government. I think it's part of the same setup, the same business.
Well, then, I agree. Okay, I think there's definite manipulation with the food production, and I've seen articles.
Yes, that's been demonstrated many times.
Yeah, then why wouldn't they nationalize the food companies?
No, that is what they used to call the $64,000 question, isn't it? That's the point, that they didn't. That's the big mistake that Chavez made. And above all, the people around Chavez, I'm convinced, did not have the same intentions, the same ideas as the late president. And in fact, they didn't want to. They were afraid to go all the way. And all the time they were trying to conciliate the oligarchy, the rich people. It was a big mistake. Big mistake. I mean, I know there's some people, reformists and so on, they think you can have capitalism with a human face. You know, Ed, you cannot. You cannot. You try it. You try and negotiate a settlement with the enemy, with the other side. It's like trying to persuade a man-eating tiger to eat lettuce, to eat. I know some vegans might approve of that, but you just try it. You know, you will never convince the tiger, but you'll end up inside his belly. And I very much fear that's what's occurring in Venezuela, unfortunately.
Yeah. And I know at one point, it was gasoline was like 10 cents a gallon down in Venezuela, was it?
Yeah.
And what is it now? Do you know?
I don't know. I know that in recent days, actually, the inflation has taken off quite a lot because of the effects of the crisis, the sanctions, and so on, and also the falling price of oil. I mean, that damages the economy considerably in Venezuela. Obviously, oil has been very cheap, but I think the government has attempted to increase the price of oil, and to some extent that's justified, because it was ridiculously low. And if you've ever been to Caracas, the traffic jams there are something else again.
Yeah, I could imagine. Now, let me ask you a question.
You can't actually.
I always advocate here in the United States for the nationalization of the oil industry, which is $200 billion a year. And I always say that, well, and I'm not an economist, but I'm a common sense kind of guy, that this would reduce the cost of oil. Gasoline would be so much cheaper, and this would reduce the cost of goods and services across the board. Lower gas prices should be a good thing. And people right now, gas prices are very low here in the United States just because of the markets. Yeah. And Trump is saying, no, we need to increase the price of oil. Now, why would that be good for the average person to pay more for gasoline?
Well, you are assuming that Trump represents the interest of the average person. Right. I think he represents the interest of the average billionaire like himself.
I agree with you, but the average person here who supports Trump is enjoying low gas prices. And when they hear their president saying, I want to raise the price of your gasoline, why don't they wake up? Why don't they see that doesn't benefit themselves?
As far as I think you find that many of them will be waking up gradually. It's true. I was recently told, I don't know if it's true, you can confirm or deny, but I think that presidents' ratings are now beginning to fall, aren't they?
Well, who knows, because the opposition, Mr. Biden, is such a loser of a candidate that he's not going to win. He doesn't have a chance.
Yeah, well, you're right. I mean, for goodness sake, I mean, if he wanted to put up deliberately a candidate that was going to lose the election, who better than Joe Biden, for God's sake?
I can't think of one. Maybe Joe Biden... Maybe his son who was getting shooting crack addicts.
Yeah. I've seen more life on a fishmonger's slab. Oh dear.
Mr. Woods, I have to play a commercial break, okay? And I forgot to tell you off the air, the commercial break is oh my goodness, it's 4 minutes long, so you have plenty of time to take a little.
Oh, that's real good.
I'm sorry, 4 minutes long. We'll be back with more of Alan Woods, who is an expert on Marxism, socialism, communism. We're talking today about the Venezuelan Revolution, a Marxist perspective. You can get that on Amazon.com. His website is called Marxist.com. You can't beat that. And then, boy, and what are some of the books you've written that you wanted to share with the audience?
Pardon?
Some of the books that you've written that you wanted to share with the audience, Franco, The Great Betrayal and Reason and Revolt.
Yes, there's those. There are many others, but those are some. And there's another one I wrote, which is A History of Bolshevism, which is quite a substantial work, which took me some years to write. History of the Bolshevik Party, And there are many others, actually. There's one in Venezuela. There's one on the States now called Marxism in the USA. There we are. I've forgotten all about that. This is a fairly short work, if that's available. Marxism and the USA.
Excellent. Thank you so much. We'll be right back with more of Alan Woods after these messages. And now a word from our sponsors. If you find yourself in need of legal representation, it can be a very stressful time in your life. In my career, I have dealt with thousands of lawyers, I've dealt with thousands of law firms, and I can confidently recommend to you Keith M. Davidson at kmdlaw.com. Available 24 hours, 7 days a week. Just log into kmdlaw.com. That's kmdlaw.com. Or you can call toll-free 833-4KMD-LAW. That's 833-4KMD-LAW. Personal injury, wrongful death, STDs, sexual assault, car accidents. They handle it all efficiently and professionally. It doesn't matter how imposing the opposition may be, because the team at kmdlaw.com are battle-tested and fierce. They will not stop until justice prevails. Go to kmdlaw.com or call toll-free 833-4KMD-LAW. If you're in for the fight of your life, stop screwing around and contact KMD Law.
Are you ready to change your life, but don't know how to start? Is your stress and worries keeping you awake at night? Have you been battling grief, anxiety, or depression all alone? Have you lost touch with your own sense of being or spirituality? Soul Free Therapies offers professional and affordable live video streaming counseling and coaching services from the comfort of your own home. Sessions offered in English, Spanish, and Portuguese. Go to our website at www.soul-free.com and book your first session today.
Hey, check out our brand new sponsor, Dynamic Solutions 2. That's the number 2. They offer a life-changing, dynamic financial solution. The finest in fast, professional, affordable credit repair. Is your credit in bad shape? Do you need a new car? Ready to buy a new house? Do you want to rent an apartment? Are you going to apply for a job? Any one of these activities, they're going to ask for a credit report and then check out your credit score. Let Dynamic Solutions 2 erase your negative credit remarks. They have affordable monthly prices. They accept Visa, MasterCard, PayPal options available. You go to www.dynamicsolutions, that's the number 2.com, or call 424-888-2820. 424-888-2820. Now, if you enter promo code ED or you mention Ed Opperman, you get a 10% discount. How's that? You get a free consultation, all negative items removed, get back in positive credit position, Dynamic Solutions 2, life-changing dynamic financial solutions. 424-888-2820. Tell them Ed Opperman sent you. You get a 10% discount. PureSoapFlakes.com, 218-568-2525. Have you ever heard of Castile Soap? Pure Soap Flake Company handcrafts fine soap bars, laundry powder, and concentrated soap flakes using organic vegetable oils from their northern Minnesota facility. Bathe your body and wash your clothes with pure soap products that are free of fragrance, GMOs, palm oil, sodium lauryl sulfate, and synthetic additives. Keep it clean, folks. Pure Soap Flake Company products are kind to living creatures and sensitive skin, safe for drains and waterways, and work great in high-efficiency washers and top and front-loading machines. They have a little promotion going on. Contact them to order some soap. Mention the Opperman Report. You're going to get a free gift. They're going to send a little extra soap, travel size, soap bars and laundry soap, cleaning soap flakes. I've been using that stuff all day long today. Great stuff. Order today at puresoapflakes.com or give them a call, 218-568-2525, 218-568-2525. Pure Soap Flake Company is a proud member of the Handcrafted Soap and Cosmetic Guild.
It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome back to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. Don't forget, Thursday evening, 7 p.m., we have that new project, getvocal.com. It's a live video podcast. This week I have Mark Ebner coming on to talk about his book about his kidnapping in Mexico. Mr. Woods, do you... What do you have any suspicions about the death of Mr. Chavez?
No, actually. I mean, I have reason to believe. I went there after he died. Last time I went there, actually, and I spoke to a good friend of mine who had been a member of Chavez's first government. Was a doctor. And I asked him, was he poisoned? Because there was stories were going around at the time, which is natural, I suppose. And he didn't hesitate this is a doctor, he didn't hesitate to reply. He said, no, the president died of natural causes. And the reason was he didn't look after himself. Now, I know this to be true. He didn't look after himself. He hardly slept. He never stopped working. And I've got plenty of anecdotes which I could say about that. He didn't even take time off, which is a foolish mistake that he made, to take a yearly medical examination. Had he done so, they'd have discovered the cancer earlier on and he could have been saved. But he didn't. He had no thought for his own health and safety even. So that is my take on it anyway.
You know, that's interesting. Just today they were reporting that the best way to treat the coronavirus is to get the patients out of the hospital and away from the doctors quicker than you can. I think it's best to avoid. I myself try to avoid doctors and hospitals as much as I can, you know. And,
but many people do now, except for the unfortunate doctors and nurses who got no choice in the matter. And of course, because they don't have adequate protective clothing and equipment, they're also the first ones to die. And that's the case in Britain. Many of them have died already.
And it's prohibitive to visit a doctor if you don't have medical insurance or you don't have you can't afford it. And even with insurance, you get these astronomical bills. The number one cause of bankruptcy here in the United States, 70% of bankruptcies are due to medical bills. So,
good God.
Yeah. Talk about a boost to the economy. You know?
It beggars. I just can't understand this. It beggars the comprehension of any sane person that the wealthiest country in the world is in this position, that it allows its citizens to die of elementary health problems because there's no coverage. Now, there's no other civilized or semi-civilized country would tolerate such a thing as that. So that's the first thing that should be tackled in the States, I think.
Well, but one major issue here is that in the United States, especially in a high school education and even, what do you call a community college, we do not learn here the concept of socialism or communism or even capitalism. We don't learn these concepts here. They're not. One of the main reasons why Bernie had to drop out was because people would be afraid of the word socialist. that people couldn't learn even though Bernie Sanders, could you really call him a socialist? He was more like a welfarist, rather he wasn't talking about nationalizing anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you say, first of all, I don't know. Well, you say people would never have voted for Bernie Sanders. Well, that's the story that they put around. I remain unconvinced. On the contrary, I believe that the only candidate that could really have defeated Trump was Bernie Sanders. I'm firmly convinced of that.
No, I agree with you 100%. I was saying what the news media was saying is that people.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, the reason they say that he's under same as in Britain with Jeremy Corbyn, by the way. Ferocious press campaign. The so-called free press. Don't make me laugh. The billionaire press. These sharks, these hired prostitutes, so-called free press. They're not free at all. They jump to the service of Wall Street. That's what it boils down to. Because anyone that's seen as even remotely a threat to that system, he's a fair target, as was the case with Chavez, as was the case with Bernie Sanders, and in Britain, as the case with Jeremy Corbyn. Well, unfortunately, they succeeded in getting Corbyn to step down as Labour leader. And in the States, they compelled, well, I don't know. I think that Bernie could have put up a bit more of a fight. He could have stuck to his guns, and he didn't. I think that was a bad mistake, but there you are. Just my opinion. But no, what is significant is not that. What is significant, highly significant. Here's a man. Just remember, Ed, here's a man that only a couple of years ago was virtually unknown, except for a small handful of political analysts. Hillary Clinton was known to everybody, and he took her on, and he took on the apparatus of Democrats, and he won. It's astonishing. With huge success, huge mass meetings, huge drive to raise funds from the grassroots and so on. Now, that's what frightened them, really. And by the way, there's a PS to that, which seems to demonstrate the correctness of what I'm saying. I noted that about 12 months ago, I don't know if you must have noticed that, the White House produced a lengthy document against socialism. Did you know that?
I did know that. I did, because you're right.
You would. Of course, in the States, it would be known. In Britain, it's not known. But, I mean, surely that's highly significant. I mean, the White House, I don't think they'd ever done such a thing. Produce a document. And if they did so, Ed, there's only one reason. The reason is not that they were convinced that socialism could never succeed in an election in America, but precisely the opposite. They were convinced that socialism, they said so themselves in the document, was gaining ground alarmingly, and that they could, in fact, win. That's why they produced this material. That explains the ferocity of the press campaign also.
Yeah, but it's amazing. Here, Bernie was so popular, and he did inspire so many people, especially the young. But who is there? Politicians can see there's a market for that idea. They can see there's a market for it. How come no one's stepping into that void to take up that mantle?
Well, that's a good question, but I don't know. Perhaps it's the wrong question. Perhaps you could ask another question, and it is, what is remarkable to me is not what you said. I mean, there are people that claim to be socialists. I've got some doubts about their credentials. I won't mention any names for fear of causing offence. But what is remarkable to me is the enormous groundswell of support, not just among young people, particularly among young people, but not only. I met a few people in the States that were quite getting on in years that were also supporters of Bernie Sanders. That is the point, and that's the great hope for the future, And that's still there, by the way, except to say that because Bernie's there, I think he threw in the towel far too soon and far too willingly. And by the way, I'm sorry to see that he's supporting Biden now. I think that's a big mistake. That's the case of that. That's disappointed many people, unfortunately. But the groundswell of support for socialist ideas is still there. I'm firmly convinced, and it is growing.
Well, then why don't we do this? Why don't you explain to the average American how they would benefit under a socialist economic system here in the United States?
Well, first of all, I don't think it would take much to convince people that the present setup is not satisfactory. That's the starting point. The colossal, you see, they say there's no money and so on. There's vast fortunes, trillions of dollars, in the hands of the bankers and the wealthy, the fat cats in Wall Street. Now, the question I would ask you in America is, look, surely Given all the horrors of the present crisis, to look no further, the mass graves and the other horrors, there's no need for me to elaborate on. Surely there's a pressing need that this money should be used not for private profit, but for the interests of the generality of the average American citizen, if you want to put it, Joe Public, if you want to put it like that. Now, that's I think, an unanswerable argument. Next step, the big pharmaceutical companies and the other sharks that make profit out of people's health and lives and death, which is frankly immoral. First step, take them over. And by the way, I wouldn't pay them a penny or a cent in compensation. Not a red cent. By the way, I can cite before people start thinking about Russia and so on, I can cite a very good American example for that. You know who confiscated most, perhaps more than any other man in history? Abraham Lincoln. Oh, yes. When he freed the slaves, that was a massive confiscation for which no compensation, not a cent of compensation was ever paid. So I would say, well, look, if it's good enough for good old Abe, it's good enough for us. Let us take over the fat guys. And by the way, I clarify this because that's where the confusion comes in. I'm not talking about the small man, the middle class, the small farmer, the small shopkeeper, the small person who owns a farm. Not interested in that. Not interested in them. We're interested in the people that really hold the economic power. That's to say, what used to be called the commanding heights of the economy. The banks, I would say that, very often I say, look, I'm not an extremist. I'm not an extreme man. I'm not advocating anything. I don't want to nationalize everything. All I want is to nationalize three little things, that's all. The land, the banks, and the big monopolies, that's all. The rest, they can stay in private hands, not interested in the rest. In fact, we'd offer cheap credits to the small businesses, who need it to survive. Why not? Offer them cheap. They're being ripped off by the middlemen and by the big supermarkets and by the big distributing companies and the trucking companies and, above all, the banks. And we'd offer them cheap credits. Why not?
Let me ask you this, Mr. Woods. Because if the crooks we have in power right now were the ones to do this nationalization, these crooks are not going to do this to benefit us. They're going to do that to benefit themselves. Now, how do we get the crooks out of there?
No, that's a fundamental. You see, Bernie raised the question of a political revolution against the billionaire class. I think that's an interesting slogan, but it needs to be concretized, it needs to be specified, doesn't it? I would first of all, we have to carry it. We have to take a broom and sweep out all those crooks. When the Bolsheviks took power in Russia, this is an interesting point. When Lenin and Trotsky took power in Russia, it was on the basis of a massive, popular, democratic movement. It was extremely democratic, the most democratic movement in history. What they introduced was that no official in the state, in any nationalized industry, for example, or the government, including the president, should receive a higher wage than a skilled worker. Nobody. And that was pursued under Lenin. It was changed understanding, but that was the policy. Now, that would be the policy for the USA also, that the industry should be nationalized, but they should be taken over under workers' control and management. We don't want any state bureaucracy or the fat cats taking over the nationalized industry. It should be under the democratic control of the working class. That's the first point. And no director or factory manager or politician or elected person should receive a higher wage than a skilled worker and should be subject to the right of recall at all times. If they don't do what we expect them to do, they should be kicked out immediately and replaced with somebody who... That, by the way, was the program of the Bolshevik Party in 1917. I think it's perfectly applicable to the States, don't you?
So for the United States, you would not advocate for a centralized government as in the Soviet Union. You would advocate for states' rights, states' control.
Well, not exactly. I'm in favor of central planning, but it's got to be under democratic control. There's no contradiction between these two things, I mean, there's no point in splitting up industries into little local or state-wide units that would be detrimental to the economy. That's no good. Central planning is good. By the way, central planning in the Soviet Union worked brilliantly. That's an element which is never given its due, That's what enabled them to win the Second World War against Hitler. It was a centralized planned economy that definitely worked in the Soviet Union. There's no two ways about it. But, of course, that was under bureaucrats. Now, that's what I explained to your friend, your American hypothetical critic of communism. We do not advocate the type of system they had in Russia under Stalin. That was not socialism. That was not communism. That was a bureaucratic and totalitarian caricature of socialism. Nothing to do with the ideas of Marx. And then that we do not want. American people are wedded to democracy, and it's good that they're wedded to democracy. The only thing is, of course, Russia was a very backward country in 1970, extremely backward, like more backward than Pakistan today. America is an advanced, wealthy country which, under socialist planning, could carry out what the Bolsheviks attempted to carry out, and of course they were not able to fulfill that because of the backwardness of Russia. But in America, that's a different kettle of fish.
So then your ideal, you could point to a successful execution of Marxism?
Well, I think Russia was initially, the early days of the Russian Revolution. It was a model of a democratic society, much more democratic than what America or Britain is at the present time, for instance. And as far as the nationalized plan was, despite the bureaucracy, despite the Stalinist regime, which, by the way, was a counter-revolution against the Bolshevik Party, Stalin could only succeed in coming to power by exterminating the Bolshevik. That little detail is frequently forgotten. But Stalinism and Bolshevism are two separate things. Yes, but what they left was the fundamental economic gains of the revolution. The nationalization and the planned economy succeeded brilliantly. For goodness sake, you can't provide a single example in history of a country that went from an extreme backward state in 1917. I mean, I'll give you one example. How many industrial workers were in Russia in 1917? I'll tell you, less than 4 million, with a population of 150 million. Extremely backward. The revolution transformed what was a very backward third world country into an advanced industrial nation with an advanced education system, an advanced health system. Just one little element, you see, even when the Soviet Union collapsed, which it did because of the bureaucratic mismanagement and so on. But nevertheless, the CIA itself admitted in the 1980s the Soviet space program was 10 years in advance of the USA at that time. So now we're trying to say, well, it didn't achieve anything, it was a failure. It was not a failure. I think that it achieved quite a lot. On the basis of an advanced an economy like the USA, of course, you'd set it from a far higher base, and therefore you could achieve a damn sight more than what Russia ever achieved.
Mr. Woods, we only have a couple of minutes left. What would you like to leave us with?
Well, first of all, hope. I think they've been short supply there in the States. No. I have every confidence in the ability of the American people to draw the necessary conclusions from the present crisis. And they are learning. You know, Lenin used to say, life teaches, and life is teaching a lot of lessons to a lot of people. So that's very good. And the other thing is I would encourage you to look at the website that you mentioned, Marxist.com, and see what you think of our ideas. Tomorrow, by the way, is the 1st of May, which, of course, was organized, first of all, in Chicago in the USA. And we intend to celebrate the May Day on our website tomorrow, and we invite you approximately at this time, half an hour earlier or so, to join us in celebrating the International Festival of the World Working Class. Because socialism is worldwide or it is nothing.
You know, it's fascinating. Every year on May Day, all the labor unions, all the workers come out. You never see the capitalists celebrating the workers.
They've got enough to celebrate every day. They don't need a special day to celebrate.
That's right. They're celebrating free labor.
Celebrating slavery, yes.
Yeah. Mr. Woods, I enjoyed this very much. I can't thank you enough. Anything you ever want to promote and come on the show, or something on your mind you want to talk about, just let me know. I'd love to have you back.
My pleasure, Ed. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Also want to thank Mr. Trottier, who helped us book this guest, too, as well. We had him on last week. I forget the name of Socialist.org, I think was the name of his website. Socialistrevolution.org. was the website. Thank you so much, Alan Woods. And you want to check out Mr. Woods' books, The Venezuelan Revolution, A Marxist Perspective. Also, too, Franco, but Franco in Spain there, The Great Betrayal, Reason and Revolt. The website is Marxist.com. And hey, don't forget, getvocal.com. Every Thursday night live. I need people to go there and sign up and pop into the chat room, the live thing there, because, listen, I'll be honest with you, okay? All right? I'm a worker, okay? And this is a paid gig. This is my job. And I need some, viewers over there. So these Get Vocal guys stop nagging me. And, their checks don't start bouncing on me, if you know what I mean. So we need you guys to get in there. If you want to help support the show, that's a good way to help support the show. You get extra content. You get video. Ooh. I'm going to be doing my Chippendales routine this evening. I'm going to shave my back and got my G-string out. Me and Mark Ebner. Thank you so much. Good night.